goes, what else can we do about the access without doing that? Because the first thing people think of is, well, I don't want to unindex everything. Right. And there's a few other solutions. Number one, how about removing access from people who don't need it? Well, that sounds like a lot of work, and it
you
is.
Map down what their function is, what tools they need. You almost have to do an organizational-wide interview.
Yes, at some level.
Or you can start shutting stuff off and see who complains, of course.
You could do that.
The old school IT method of change.
you actually, with a higher license from Microsoft.
Such as?
Like a Microsoft 365 E5.
E5, okay.
Or E5 security added onto a Microsoft E3, you can implement something called access reviews. And an access review is an automated process where I say, well, I have these 50 sites that I'm worried about, and I would like the owner of those sites, there's always an owner, to get a email with a list of all the people who have access to that site, no matter how they have access, and say yay or nay, allow or disallow, approve, disapprove, I forget the wording. But they can go down the list and say, oh no, I forgot that person had access. Deny, 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 deny. So that's an automated process, but of course you get that with a higher level of license. But that's a great way to do it.
And you can do that manually in E3, but you could,
Yeah, manually it's tough. I'd have to tell the owner or whoever, hey, go through the site and figure out who has access. That's a tough thing because you can give someone access to a list or a library. That it won't show up right away if you're just looking at the site. You may have to dig in a little bit deeper. So it's a little more difficult. So these access reviews are pretty handy.
Yeah. And what are the other things that people need to think about and prepare for? Obviously, this thing is deadly potential, so
came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And really almost. I mean, last year people started talking about, hey, do you use the new ChatGPT? Microsoft has one. It wasn't called Copilot at the time. So
I thought for a while that people were misstating autopilot. I'm like, oh, you mean autopilot? No, I think it's called Copilot. I'm like, whatever. So
that's one of the Microsoft naming things.
Everything's a pilot.
Everything is a branded thing. So now people throw out the word Defender, and that means 8 different things, where they think it means one thing. Copilot, same thing. There's actually a few versions of Copilot, actually a bunch of them. But for the general Copilot, if I just say Copilot, and I don't say anything else, according to Microsoft, I'm talking about the publicly available Copilot on the internet that you can get to through copilot.microsoft.com or through bing.com. If you go to Bing, the Copilot has a kind of a double ribbon symbol.
Yes, I think I accidentally downloaded that the other day.
You can click on it, you can type in a prompt, and there's the Copilot from Microsoft 365. And the difference is, in the background, there's this big, large language model where all the magic happens. But the difference between the two is where the things you type into a prompt are grounded. What grounding means is, where does it go to get the extra information? Right. Large language model has everything in the world that they put into it up to about 2 years ago. Now, it doesn't know anything from then till now. So if I needed to give me a good answer, I need to use some more refreshed information. Copilot from Microsoft 365, that can ground itself in my tenant, all the stuff I have access to. Copilot on the internet grounds itself basically in what Bing has indexed on the internet.
Interesting.
The Bing used to be called Bing Chat. So, there's a big difference. Yeah. So if someone is given a Copilot for Microsoft 365 license, if they were to go to copilot.microsoft.com, they would actually get a toggle to go to do a work. It says work or web. Work means it's going to ground it in Microsoft 365 Copilot. Web means it's going to ground it on the internet. Microsoft has gone to great lengths to make sure that if you're on the public one, it never grounds itself in your tenant.
Okay.
That's why they have a big switch there.
So this is why a lot of people think they already have Copilot, because it's kind of embedded in their browser a little bit.
It is, and you can see it.
It's not the same thing.
It is not the same thing. No. Copilot, if you have Copilot in Windows, you'll see the work and the web as well. if you're in Microsoft Edge, Edge actually has a sidebar where you can have a document open and the sidebar
Yeah.
you get over to the right, to the left, whatever. Copilot can be over there answering questions based on the document that you have open in the middle. So there's a lot of weird combinations and it's confusing.
Yeah.
It really is. So, but in talking about the internet, then we get into, Copilot's just one Gen AI, generative, artificial intelligence, meaning it generates information based on a prompt that whatever words that you type in. There's dozens on the internet. What if I want help with a document? I'm trying to type up a document, or I've already got one typed up. It's this big proposal. It's got a bunch of company proprietary information in it. I don't like how it looks. I don't have a Copilot for 365 license. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy that into a chat GPT or something on the internet and let it
I'm going to upload it to my Grammarly and then run my ChatGPT add-on to it.
So that's another worry. How do we prevent something like that from happening? And then now we get into data loss prevention and all the tools in Purview that can help us with that. The labeling tools.
And Purview is just a definition quick. What is Purview?
Purview is really a renamed compliance. So Microsoft Compliance Center, it dealt with, and now it's called Purview. So it deals with retention, data governance, basically, retention policies, data loss prevention policies, something called Microsoft Information Protection, which is a way to label documents that the label will stay with them. So you can see how many documents are labeled a certain way. You can even take that and encrypt documents that are labeled a certain way. You can even use that labeling as a condition for DLP policies. So there's a lot of benefit to get out of labeling.
You get that with E3?
You get a lot of functionality with E3. You get more with the Microsoft E5. And Purview is one of those areas where it gets real confusing with the Microsoft labeling, the Microsoft licensing. So
maybe we'll hit that at the end.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. Get into the esoteric.
Exactly. So, we get a lot of questions though about that because Microsoft, one of their solutions, if you're worried about Copilot internally or externally, but a lot internally is, you take advantage of Purview Microsoft Information Protection, which is labeling, sensitivity labeling. And at a glance, they don't really tell you how that might help you out. And there's a few ways. DLP, if I label something and say I don't want it leaving the company, great. That would help with sending stuff to generative AI sites. But even labeling stuff internally, one thing that we're recommending if people can create labels is to make an encrypted label, which is just a label that puts rights for users. I can say the executive group can read this document. Wherever that document goes, that's it. The document's encrypted. If I try and access it, the document's got a phone home to the encryption service, the labeling encryption service, see if that user has access, and then send the access to Word or Excel or a web, if they're on the website, and tell that product, here's what access that user has, and then it will decrypt and give them access. Turns out, in order for Copilot to actually read something out of a document, from a SharePoint library or OneDrive, it needs the ability to copy information out of the document. So again, talking about crown jewels, what we can do is create a label that removes that ability. Now the user will have that ability removed as well, but so will Copilot. Now Copilot can't dig into that document, even though it might be aware of it. You cannot dig into the document and use any of that document's information to come up with the results of a prompt. So another tool in the tool bag, but you have to do a little bit of work with labeling, have to understand it. That requires some work ahead of time.